Hello everybody, so today we're going to be showing you how you can set up your snowboard bindings onto your snowboard, and what we need for that is our snowboard, our bindings for all the screws and attachments, our boots, and a nice simple tool like this. Let's do it. Okay, so today we're going to be using my freeride board, which is a Niche Story 156 centimeters, and we've got some Burden Genesis X bindings with the standard 4-hole mounting system. So I'm going to show you how to set this up. First thing we're going to want to do is obviously make sure that we've got all our screws and attachments there. So I'm going to undo these buckles here, lift the high back up out of the way, and then we've got a nice standard mounting disc here with all the screws attached in there. Okay. So I ride with a 21-inch stance, which is a little bit narrower than some people, but what I find with stance widths is when you have a slightly narrower stance, you get a lot more movement in your lower joints, so it makes things like turning a lot easier and having a bit more control there. People that have the wider stances generally have a little bit more stability and can be super good for things like your freestyle, and especially if you're taking off on big jumps and things like that, it can really aid your stability on the landing of those jumps. But I'm going to set my stance up around 21 inches today. So what I'm going to do is start lining the bindings up, and what I can do is actually start getting my angles in to start with. So just on this base disc here, you'll see that there are some numbers and they go up in increments of 3. And I'm going to set these angles up. And for my free ride board, what I generally do is I ride usually 15 on the front foot and around 6 on the back foot. So I'm going to put this disc into the base of the binding here, line it up with the arrow, and just line it up so it's on around a 6-degree mark just there. I'm going to come along, I'm going to line up the 4 screw holes with the ones just here. Come over to the front foot. And I'm going to set the bindings on at 15 degrees on this one. Okay, so what you can do is you can actually put the board down onto the ground and put your feet into the board and see if that feels comfortable. If it doesn't, you can make it slightly wider or slightly narrower, depending on whatever feels comfortable to you. I know these are the screw holes that I put it in because I pre-measured it out with a tape measure. So I'm going to go ahead and screw these in. Next up, we've got our bindings attached to the board. We figured out our stance width, we figured out our angles. Next thing we're going to look at is lining the high backs up with the heel edge. Now the way you do this is there's some screws just down on the side here that attaches the high back to the main base of the high back. And when we undo these screws, what we can do is just twist the high back and line that up with the heel edge. What that allows you to do is just get a bit more comfort and a bit more power transfer to that heel edge so that we're not losing out on any of that. So let's go and readjust those right now. I've readjusted the high backs, lined those up with the heel edge now. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our boots and we're going to start lining up the heel strap and the toe strap to make sure that it fits around our boot nice and comfortably and that we're getting the most performance that we can from the bindings themselves. So let's get our boots. Okay, so with our boots, what we're going to do is move the straps out of the way, and we're basically just going to place one of the boots into the binding. Now you don't need your foot in the boot here. And all you're going to do is wrap the strap over the top, and you're just going to crank it up until it's nice and snug around the boot. Now what we're looking for here is to make sure that the binding is nicely over the top of the boot and it's not too lopsided, so it isn't there isn't too much of the strap on one side or the other. It's nice and equal, and the main middle part of that binding is going over the top of the boot there. Same thing for the toe strap, which is going to do this up. so it's fairly tight over the toes. And again, we just want to make sure that toe cup is sitting nicely over the toes and it's not too one-sided on one way or the other. So once they're nicely lined up, then you're going to be getting the most optimal performance out of those bindings. So once you've done that for both straps, your board is pretty much set up to go. What you want to check is to make sure that the bindings are nice and centered on the board. So between your toe edge and your heel edge, you want to make sure that there's no overhang on the bindings. And we also want to make sure that the bindings are coming pretty much as close to the edges as they can. This allows you to get the most amount of power going through to those edges, and you're not going to lose any of it if they're too far away from it. So what you might find is on the underneath of the bindings, there's actually a piece that you can slide out to get a little bit closer to the toe edge so you're not losing any of that toe edge drive. And likewise with the heels, making sure that that's lined up with the heel edge. So when we're on our heel edge, we're getting the most amount of edge grip and power within that edge as we can. That's it. That's how to set your bindings up on your snowboard. Might seem a little bit daunting at first, but once you do it once, it gets so much easier after that. So go out, enjoy, rip up the mountain. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.